Good morning. One of the largest US investment banks, Lehman Brothers, filed for bankruptcy this morning, leading to dramatic falls on global markets. It's the largest bankruptcy filing in US history and comes following huge losses by Lehman on the subprime mortgage market. Governments and central banks across the world are now taking steps to reassure markets and shore up their own banks, as Lehman's failure raised fears about the strength of the global financial system.
We are on the edge of Armageddon. We cannot let another bank go down. People need to believe in their banks. If they're going to put money in a bank, they need to believe that they're going to get it back. Now, Lehman's is gone. Who's to say any bank is safe? If you let a bank go under in a crisis, it makes the panic worse. That's practically doctrine. No more banks go down.
That was how it started. I mean, the experts will tell you different and say the crisis started earlier. Some blame 100% mortgages. Some blame light touch regulation. Some blame giveaway budgets. Some blame the euro itself. But the day we'll remember as the start was that day in September 2008 when Lehman Brothers went down. And we all started to worry who would be next.
Monsieur Trichet.
Monsieur Lenihan, I have been calling your colleagues across the Eurozone. There is consensus on this matter. It's vitally important that no bank in Europe goes down.
Well, Monsieur Trichet, what support can we expect from Europe for our banks?
Monsieur Lenihan, the ECB has no mandate for this.
Monsieur Trichet, we're talking about the protection of the euro.
Monsieur Lenihan, we are talking about the protection of European banks. Your banks are your sovereign responsibility.
I accept that.
All of the euro area leaders are agreed. We cannot let a bank go down. Each will do what is necessary to protect their own banks. Ireland can expect that of its fellow Eurozone members, and each would expect the same of Ireland.
Merci, Monsieur Trichet.
Bonne chance, Monsieur Lenihan.
We'd better get the cabinet lined up.
Do you want to call them in?
Just tell them to expect a call. When are the banks due?
Shortly.
Fuck!
Taoiseach, the Attorney General is waiting for you.
Fuck! Sorry. Let's go.
You know what's coming next? One decision taken in the middle of the night that would haunt us for the next 3 years. This is the story of those 3 years, compressed into 2 hours and this studio.
The Irish government has announced a bank guarantee on the entirety of the debts of the country's 6 principal banks. The Department of Finance says all deposits, bonds and debt will be covered by the state for 2 years. The Dáil will debate the guarantee later today.
The story appears to be that one night sometime recently, a crisis descended on the Irish banking system, and the minister had to stay up all night to save a bank from going down the tubes. Now, I wish to know, was the crisis a solvency crisis or a liquidity crisis? If it was a solvency issue that caused the crisis, it's going to cost us. There will be a transfer of taxpayers' money at some point, probably sooner rather than later, to underpin one or more of the guaranteed banks.
Turn that off.
What if the banks aren't solvent? What if they're lying? Or just don't know?
You should send somebody in.
We've already sent a barrage of consultants in.
Or somebody more independent. An economist. To go deeper, take a proper look.
The government has appointed the economist Peter Bacon to investigate the crisis in the banking sector. Tom Lyons, what do you make of this appointment?
Peter Bacon is a straight shooter. He tells it as he sees it. I expect Brian Lenihan will be looking for him to bring some fresh ideas to the banking crisis.
On the 30th of September last, you, the Irish government, guaranteed the entirety of the Irish bank's debts. You've asked me to find out to what extent the banks have the assets to meet these debts. Now, of course, you all know the bank's assets are mostly the loans it has given out. So the key question is, how good are these loans? Another way of asking that might be, how much of their loans were on property?
We all know Anglo was basically a property bank, but the other banks were well diversified.
It wasn't just Anglo. AIB was nearly as bad. Bank of Ireland was chasing them down the rabbit hole.
How much was on property?
Across the 6 guaranteed banks, 160 billion euro.
160 billion euro just on property?
160 billion euro just on commercial property. They lent a further 100 billion euro or so on residential property. So they lent 260 billion euro on property.
How much have they lost?
The market's still falling. It's impossible to be precise.
Imprecisely, then.
Perhaps 34 billion euro.
34 billion that we're on the hook for.
That's what guarantee means.
That could bankrupt the state.
Which is precisely what the markets are afraid of, that the Irish state cannot afford the guarantee it is given. Now, soon, you'll reach a point when you can't borrow anymore. You won't be able to pay the teachers and the nurses. You'll have to slash services and hike taxes. In the meantime, you'll have defaulted on the bank's debts, so the banks will collapse. You'll wake up one morning, and the country will be back in the 1980s.
We have to rescind the guarantee. Let the losses lie where they fall, on the people who lent the money to the banks.
The bondholders.
Well, they took a risk. They did that to make money. Now that risk has gone bad, so they should lose money. Isn't that what this is? Capitalism?
Put the guarantee in law.
On the basis of lies?
There's no evidence that the banks lied.
They lent 260 billion euro on property during a property bubble, and then they came to us and claimed they just had a liquidity problem, not a solvency one.
We gave a sovereign guarantee. We can't just rescind it.
If the banks don't pay their debts, they'll collapse.
Well, then we could print the money in order to pay those
We
debts.
can't just print the money. The ECB wouldn't allow it.
Well, this is their problem too. They have skin in the game. They don't want a European bank collapse.
The ECB won't print money. They force us out of the euro.
I'm not going to be the finance minister that takes us out of the euro.
What's your solution?
Firstly, you have to deal with the public finances so that you can carry the extra sovereign debt that will come from taking on the bank's losses. Now, those losses, you don't deny them or try to hide them. You face up to them. And you make a plan to pay them off.
But we can't pay them off.
You need a way to defer them. You need to manage the assets, the bad property loans, so you can work them out over time. Asset management agency.
NAMA.
Give us the highlights.
Well, you buy the bad property loans from the banks and then you warehouse them. And as the market recovers, they regain value, you sell them off.
Will it work?
It'll work. If the markets believe it can work. It's a confidence play. I mean, you're confronting this. You're not running away from it. That builds confidence.
Let me just see if I have this right. Our fucking bankers borrowed money from these fuckers, and now we have to pay those fuckers back. And to do that, we have to borrow the money from them. And they're going to charge us extra for the privilege of lending us the money that we're going to use to pay them back. And it's going to cost us so much that we're going to have to spread it out over decades with this NAMA. And if we don't look like we're happy about it, they might lose confidence and fuck us anyway.
That's a rather approximate version.
And what if it doesn't work?
We're back where we started. Only worse.
It's a vicious circle.
It's a fucking vice grip.
I've heard it called a doom loop.
National bankruptcy.
Or an assistance program of some form.
An assistance program.
a loan package.
From who?
Oh, the IMF. Perhaps the EU.
A bailout?
The EU don't do bailouts.
Oh, they might have to start.
Like some banana republic. Not fit to run ourselves, forced to hand over the keys.
That was our nightmare right through the 80s. But we kept them out then, we'll keep them out now. Can we handle the deficit?
There'll be tough decisions. I'll need your full support.
The banks. This NAMA.
Well, you need the ECB on side.
I'll set up a call with Trichet.
This country is not defaulting, and we're not being bailed out. We'll pay our way. Yes, the next 3 years will be tough, but this time will pass, and Ireland will rise again. Now more than ever, we need a mehel spirit. Dina igaber lechela, son lechela. People working together for each other. There is a future to be fought for. I will lead that fight. Tagagi Yam Makoida!
A record 326,000 people are currently signing on the live register, according to figures released today. That's the highest monthly level since records began in 1967.
There have been angry scenes at the Waterford Crystal plant in Kilbarry after staff were told of its imminent closure.
Over 300 people lost their jobs every day last month, according to the latest figures that bring home the impact of the recession on ordinary families.
We spent 2009 fighting on two fronts, trying to fix the banks with NAMA and fix the economy by getting the public finances under control. In the midst of all this, we have to find a new governor for the central bank. The minister has had the eccentric idea of hiring an economist.
It's not looking good.
But tax revenues are up.
VAT and income tax, but capital gains and stamp duty have collapsed. Look at these projections. You're off course.
Leave it with me.
Well, I'm joined now by the business journalist Tom Lyons. Tom, there have been rumours today of a possible cut in public sector pay. Is this just kite flying?
Well, sources close to the Department of Finance are very much briefing that further pay cuts are absolutely inevitable. But I understand that the Taoiseach Brian Cowan is resisting.
What's all this pay cut rubbish?
We need to save €1.3 billion on the public sector pay bill alone. We have to cut wages.
We'll negotiate it with the unions.
There's nothing to negotiate. We have no choice.
Trust me. I'll talk to them.
Good morning. The Cabinet is today expected to discuss controversial plans for radical cuts in public sector pay in order to address the crisis in the public finances.
I think you'll all be glad to know that we have agreed a substantial cut in public sector pay for 2010, which will be compensated for by time off in lieu arrangement that will run over the subsequent years. Now, the next
time off in lieu?
There'll be no net loss to the public service.
How much time?
12 days.
12 days holidays?
They're not holidays.
That's a ridiculous spin on it.
Well, what else are they then?
They're unpaid leave.
Yeah, unpaid holidays.
So we are going to prepare the public for another austerity budget by announcing that public servants are to get an extra 12 days holidays?
They're not holidays.
Well, that will require some spin then.
So they're not holidays, it's still time off.
12 days off.
Santa's come early.
Will you stop doing the opposition's work for them?
Can we get back on track and concentrate on the policy?
If this is the policy, you won't get to concentrate on it.
The media will eat us alive.
It's our job back to go out there and make the case for what we believe to be the fairest, most workable policy.
Have you not seen the public mood out there?
Do you not remember the pensioners?
Exactly. We don't want to go through that again.
Can't sell this one.
We haven't even seen the details.
It's not about the details, it's about the big picture.
It's about the details, Mary. What else is it about it?
We'll pick this up again tomorrow.
You're dismissing something out of hand that you haven't even looked at.
There was widespread scepticism today of proposals for unpaid leave for civil servants, with opponents branding it the 12 days of Christmas.
You can't do it, Brian.
It's a perfectly valid proposal.
Time off and Lou.
It's a quid pro quo.
All the public will hear is perks.
It's not a perk. We're cutting their pay.
And compensating them for that.
There's no net loss to the public purse.
But where's the gain? You can't do it.
But partnership requires us to negotiate.
The old ways are gone.
The old ways worked.
Not anymore. And it's a public relations disaster. The 12 days of Christmas. It's already undermining our whole agenda.
I've staked my authority on
You're
it.
going to have to back out.
I can't back out.
I can't deliver a budget on these figures. The markets are watching.
Who elected the markets? They don't get to decide how we run our country.
We're confronting this crisis head on. That's the narrative. The markets need to see that. Confidence. You can't go ahead with this.
Now the 12 days of Christmas appear to be over. It seems the Taoiseach has backed down. Ursula, what is the political significance of this?
Well, it's certainly a blow to Brian Cowan's authority as Taoiseach, no doubt about that. Brian Lenihan is now clearly the driving force in government, but whether this momentum will drive him all the way to the Taoiseach's office, well, that remains to be seen.
How long have you known?
Just a couple of days.
How are the family? How are you feeling?
I start chemotherapy in January.
What? What do you want to do?
I will, of course, offer my resignation, Taoiseach, if you would prefer that. I may have to.
Do you have to now?
No.
Good. I need you. You make your own decision, I'll back you. You need to announce it soon, or some fucker will leak it.
The Finance Minister, Brian Lenihan, has been diagnosed with cancer. We understand that initial tests reveal that the Minister is suffering from a malignant tumour. The Department of Finance has said the Minister will make a statement in the new year.
Having discussed the matter with the Taoiseach and having consulted my medical advisors, it is my intention to continue to serve as Minister for Finance. I am determined to implement the plan for economic recovery. I will supervise the work of my department. I will prepare for and attend government meetings. I will make myself accountable to Dáil Éireann. I will not be accepting invitations for speaking engagements. I do not intend to issue any further statements about this matter. Thank you.
Minister, you said the growth is at the entrance to your pancreas. Is it terminal,
It's
Minister?
a growth, and it's a growth that I intend to defeat, or it'll defeat me.
One more question, Minister.
I don't accept that for 1 second.
The ESRI report.
Up there in the recliner.
That's for you to rest.
Just put it there. I suggest you go back and check your
Excuse me,
copy.
Minister.
What is this?
An invitation.
He's not accepting any
Well, you
invitations.
can tell him that from me.
To the Michael Collins commemoration at Bellingham Law.
Now, when on earth would I want to go to Bellingham Law?
To give the oration.
What? I'll call you back. Give me that. Has anyone from Fianna Fáil ever been at Bellingham Law?
Not since you shot him.
I have taken a particular interest in the work of Michael Collins as Minister for Finance between 1919 and 1922. Here was a man at constant risk of death, yet he still had the time and the ability to build the foundations of a system of financial control. He raised the loan to finance the work of the revolutionary government. That was a truly remarkable
feat.
He was a driven, ambitious man.
He was born to be a leader. In times of economic difficulty, the greater good may require governments to take unpopular decisions. But that is what leadership in a democracy is about.
In Cork, the sun shines. Brian looks well. The Fine Gael crowd loves him. The media laps it up. It feels like the end of something age-old, a fresh start. The speech creates a wave of good feeling. It lasts 2 days.
The ratings agency Standard & Poor's has today downgraded Ireland's sovereign credit rating, citing the rising costs of the banks. Joining me now to discuss this is the economist Stephen Kinsella. Stephen, what consequences will this downgrade have for the Irish economy?
It's not just the banks. It's the fiscal situation.
But we're meeting our targets on the cuts.
It's not working.
What do you mean it's not working?
We could be in trouble.
We had an emergency budget. You said we had the finances under control.
The projections for the deficit have got worse.
But we're out of recession.
Our earlier projections were too optimistic.
But that's not... No, we have it. Our figures show...
Your figures are out of date.
Your figures are wrong.
You need to go further with the budget correction. This could get worse. Very quickly.
Governor?
It's not working. The figures are worse than we thought. We're going to have to cut deeper.
We can't cut deeper.
A comprehensive program of tax changes and cuts. A 4-year plan.
You want to cut the minimum wage?
We have to restore competitiveness.
That's not the Fianna Fáil way.
We have So go to the people, go to the country. With this, our recovery plan, seek a mandate.
Don't give me that politically correct nonsense about mandates. We have a mandate.
Ursula, you're hearing reports of tensions between the Taoiseach and the Finance Minister.
Yes, the government needs to make cuts. But sources close to Brian Lenihan have been saying that the Taoiseach is unwilling to take the hard decisions necessary.
I cursed all foreign money, no credit could I gain, which filled my heart with longing for the lakes of Pontchartrain.
The economy will be the first issue on the agenda at the annual Fianna Fáil Think-In beginning in Galway today, taking place at the Ardelon Hotel. Though there has been controversy over the issue of leadership, TDs are insisting today that the leadership is not in question.
And at each social gathering, a flowing glass I'll raise, and I'll drink a health to my Creole girl by the lakes of Pontchartrain.
Good morning and welcome to Morning Ireland, coming to you today from the Fianna Fáil Think-In in Galway. Later in the programme, we'll be talking to the Taoiseach Brian Cowan. But first, let's go to the newsroom for headlines.
Where's the Taoiseach?
Was he not called?
Why isn't that your job?
I'm an advisor, not a fucking alarm clock.
We'll go and advise him to get the fuck out of bed.
Fuck's sake.
Taoiseach Brian Cowan, thank you for joining us before your breakfast.
Thank you.
Is this budget going to be worse than people have feared?
Well, Carl, what people need to know is for the next year, we're in discussions at the moment about that. Our budget is for the next year, and the allocations that will be made will require the implementation in many respects of the Good Friday, the Croke Park Agreement, which is about redeployment, which is about better work practices.
In a tweet sent this morning, Fine Gael TD Simon Coveney has accused the Taoiseach of sounding like he was drunk or hungover in a radio interview this morning.
As the fallout from the Taoiseach's Galway interview continues, American chat show host Jay Leno last night called the Taoiseach a drunken moron.
The Cabinet has rallied around the Taoiseach today, with various ministers stepping up to defend the Taoiseach's controversial interview performance.
Of course, the Taoiseach was very hoarse during the interview.
Yes, he did sound hoarse and congested.
It's well known he has problems with nasal congestion. But I'm astounded that we're now doing interviews about the tone of his voice rather than the content.
His content was spot on. Well, from a content perspective, it was really quite impressive.
It's not about the way he tells them, it's what he's saying.
The reaction to that interview was... Well,
what the fuck is he doing?
Going viral.
How many of these are there?
About 400.
The timing of this interview couldn't be worse. Prolonged banking problems are fueling concerns about Cowan's government's ability to weather the storm.
Morning, John.
The Wall Street fucking Journal!
The New York Times.
Washington Post.
Reuters.
Fox News.
The Guardian.
BBC.
We can't take any more, Brian.
I'll leave you to it.
We have got to get rid of him.
He's the Taoiseach, John.
He's a Taoiseach on probation.
The country needs a steady hand now, John.
You think Cowan's hand is steady?
Look, I'm dealing with the banking crisis, a public finances crisis, a massive deficit.
And all
My hands
he's
are
doing
full.
is hampering you. The party is crying out for new leadership.
I wouldn't have the support. I don't have the numbers.
I can get them.
In late September 2010, the 2-year bank guarantee is almost up. The markets are worried about what will happen next. They're already pulling their money out of the banks, and the fear is that there could be another catastrophic bank run.
We have the final bill for Anglo and Nationwide.
Well?
They could need a total of 35 billion.
35 billion euro for just 2 banks.
But that's more than Bacon estimated for all the banks. And what about AIB, Bank of Ireland? What could the total bill be?
We could be looking at more than 50 billion. We may not be able to do this on our own.
And who's going to help us?
The IMF.
A bailout?
The IMF don't do bailouts. They give loans. Very large loans.
I'll tell you what, Patrick. Why don't you try explaining that nuance to the media?
We have for 2 years proposed that the bondholders share the pain of the Anglo rescue.
We have to get those overseas bondholders to fund the Irish state. You can't go to your bank manager and say, I want to default, and at the same time, I want more loans.
This happened on the minister's watch, and he is responsible for the disaster.
Now, you know very well that the reckless lending did not happen on my watch.
That is true. The minister is not responsible for the reckless lending. That is the Taoiseach's responsibility.
The government has announced that it's withdrawing from the debt markets till mid-next year, as it's already raised sufficient funding. For more on this, we're joined by business journalist Tom Lyons. Is this a sign of strength or weakness, Tom?
Well, the government wants it to be seen as a sign of strength, but the reality is the market is going to see this as a sign of panic.
There's nothing we can do.
With the operation?
It would be very difficult.
How long?
Not long.
There's no hope. We can't possibly restore the confidence of the markets. Every step we take just confirms their view that we're desperate. It's like a noose slowly tightening.
There is one step we haven't tried. Burning the bondholders.
That would collapse the banks.
The banks are bust. They've been bust for 2 years. NAMA and the ECB just has them on life support.
It would destroy confidence.
Or it might restore it. What if the markets think we've done the right thing by burning bondholders? By reducing the debt burden?
The ECB would never allow it. They'd be terrified of the precedent that force us out of the euro.
But if that's what it takes to retain our independence...
Don't be so melodramatic.
Have you thought about the consequences if you're wrong?
We'd be an international pariah. It would destroy our reputation.
What kind of reputation do you want? We're taking money from schools and hospitals to pay international speculators.
We're doing that to save the Irish economy.
This country is more than an economy.
Some of us have to run the economy. We live or die by market confidence.
What about public confidence? This crisis has destroyed people's faith in our institutions. What would it do to that faith to finally see the bank's losses being allocated fairly?
But at what cost?
No matter the cost.
It's too risky. Too many unknowns. We've withdrawn from the debt markets for now. That gives us some breathing space. Now we have to finish the 4-year plan. It has to be impressive, the maximum austerity possible. That will reassure the markets.
We just need a bit of luck.
At a summit in Deauville in France, Angela Merkel and Nicolas Sarkozy have agreed that bondholders will have to be burned in future Eurozone bank rescues.
The markets have plunged in the wake of the Deauville Declaration that will force losses on bondholders in future European bailouts.
Saliti alle stelle, dopo l'ormai famigerata dichiarazione di Deauville, come l'Irlanda più vulnerabile.
Deauville has panicked the markets.
It's just temporary.
They won't lend to us.
We've withdrawn from the sovereign debt markets.
Only till next year. If the markets don't lend to us then, we'll need to find another source of funding.
But Deauville is just what we need. A means to make the markets take their losses.
We don't want the markets to take losses. We want the markets to keep lending to us. Look, this could reinforce the vicious circle. We need to talk to Europe.
If it gets out that we're even talking to Europe about assistance, it will just become inevitable.
Technical discussions to see what might be available to us, should we need it.
The press are practically stalking the department.
We could do it in Brussels.
Minister, the BBC Newsnight, they're looking for an interview.
It'll be tough.
It'll be good for confidence. I'll do it. Set something up in Brussels. And for God's sake, make sure it doesn't leak.
And we're going straight to government buildings now for some breaking news.
I'm announcing a scheme today under which 53 tons of fresh cheddar will be distributed around the country with European Union funding. It's a small measure, but it is helpful to those in need.
And, Minister, will everybody get some cheese?
No, only those in need.
Will it be means tested, Minister?
Well, charitable organisations will do the distribution. Pardon?
What type of cheddar will it be?
Irish cheddar.
Well, for more on this, I'm joined now by the business journalist Tom Lyons. Tom, it appears the Let Them Eat Cheese story, it's gone global.
It fits this prevailing narrative in France and in Germany that Ireland just isn't capable of running itself.
On in a few moments now, Minister.
Thank you.
And now we're joined by the beleaguered Irish Finance Minister, Brian Lenihan. Minister, can you guarantee that Ireland will not have to go to the European Union for a bailout?
Absolutely.
You're unequivocal? Cast iron? 100% certain?
We have made it a cardinal plank of our policy that we will pay our debts as a state. We will continue to pay our way.
Wouldn't this assertion be rather more plausible were this crisis not entirely the consequence of your own incompetence?
I don't accept that at all.
Had you decided not to guarantee the banks, you wouldn't be in the mess you're in now, would you?
That is entirely incorrect, because one of Ireland's biggest problems is not the banks, but the €20 billion gap between public expenditure and public receipts. And the 4-year plan that we have devised will go a long way to eliminating that gap.
When you look back at the sort of character Ireland believed itself to be during the Celtic Tiger, and the desolation around you now, it's a very sad end, isn't it?
I don't accept it's the end, and I don't accept
But you lost
its
your
desolation.
sovereignty.
We haven't lost our sovereignty. We have always shared our sovereignty with our European partners. Look, we have difficulties, and we have a plan to deal with those difficulties, and now we need time to implement that plan.
Minister, thank you.
Thank you.
And now we're going back to Brussels, to the European Parliament.
Brian Lenihan was praised for his performance under pressure on the BBC last night. Will this help take the pressure off Ireland?
Well, the G20, they're the world's largest economies. They're meeting this weekend in Seoul, but the government will be hoping that Ireland is very low on their agenda.
Okay, please. We need to talk about Ireland. Ireland is causing contagion in the Eurozone. It's a threat to the stability of the euro.
The Irish are doing well. They seem to have an appetite for austerity.
They keep underestimating the size of their bank losses.
The market no longer trusts them.
The ECB has had to step in with emergency loans. We have lent 1/5 of our entire stock of reserves to Ireland.
We cannot ask for more austerity.
If Ireland goes under, Portugal could be next. If Portugal goes, then Spain.
We cannot afford to bail out Spain.
That would bring down the euro.
Ireland could be the Lehman Brothers of Europe.
There's too much uncertainty.
Of course there is uncertainty.
You're causing the uncertainty. Deauville, you can't tell the markets you're going to make them take losses and then be surprised when they don't want to lend to you. You need to row back on the Deauville Declaration. No more talk of burning bondholders. Reassure the markets. Remove the uncertainty. And you need to ring-fence Ireland. Stop the contagion.
Ireland was on the agenda of a side meeting of the G7 at the G20 summit today, with pressure increasing on the Irish government to enter a bailout program.
Is this on the record?
No.
An ECB source?
Just say official sources.
Okay. So...
The markets have lost confidence in Ireland's banks. The loss of confidence has spread to the sovereign. This has created a spiral.
A vicious circle.
The only way to end this spiral is for Ireland to go into a bailout program.
Dublin is adamant that they will not have to go into a
They
bailout.
are already in negotiations.
They're in negotiations already? I'd better get this out there.
We are fully funded. We don't need to enter any program.
No, Monsieur Lenihan. The markets do not believe you can survive without help. So we need to start negotiations on the program now. And you need to take the initiative. Can you hear me?
Monsieur Trichet, our officials will be in Brussels on Sunday for technical discussions.
For negotiations on a program.
For discussions on the possibility of a program.
We're getting calls from the foreign press.
Just direct them to the embassies.
There's a Sky News van parked outside the department.
For what?
They seem to think we're going into a bailout program.
What the fuck is going on?
I just got a call from a reporter from Bloomberg. She has a source that says we're negotiating a bailout program.
We are not negotiating a program.
No, Reuters is saying we're in negotiations on a bailout.
We are not in negotiations.
The BBC have it now.
The Irish government has begun preliminary talks with European Union officials about receiving more than £50 billion.
We are not in preliminary talks or any talks. The state is fully funded until the middle of 2011. That's the line. Make sure the cabinet all have it. And tell them to be careful.
Dublin continues to deny it is in negotiations on a bailout package. First Greece, next Ireland? That's the question being asked by markets this morning as pressure rises on Ireland to enter a bailout.
The Irish government may deny that there are talks, but so too did the Greek government 6 months ago before they accepted 110 billion.
Honohan thinks we need a bailout program. The markets are squeezing us into a program. The media think we're already negotiating a program.
Well, fuck them.
The G7 want us in a program.
The European Commission said we were on the right track with our 4-year plan.
Things have changed.
What's changed?
The markets. Deauville sent them over the edge. It keeps getting worse.
I'll tell you what's worse. 1984, I came into the Dáil. Those were bleak years in there. Fine Gael and Labour making a fucking mess of the economy. Kids leaving the country in their thousands. The IMF like the wolf at the fucking door. And then Haughey got back in, and with Matt Sherry and your father, he turned it around. They kept the IMF out. We're the Republican Party, Brian. We don't get to sign away our sovereignty.
We signed away our sovereignty a long time ago. The markets are sovereign now.
We're not in the markets. We were funded till next year.
It's the contagion. Spain, Portugal, we're dragging them down.
Portugal and Spain are still borrowing. That means they're under more immediate pressure than we are. If we have to, we can hold our breath while they drown.
That's a high-risk strategy.
Well, have you got an alternative?
A precautionary program. One that's not drawn down unless we need it. A contingency fund.
So it wouldn't be a bailout?
Not yet, anyway.
What'll they want in return?
Our corporation tax rate.
All corporation tax rate is a line in the fucking sand.
I'm sending Honohan to Brussels tomorrow for talks.
Talks?
Discussions, consultations.
Not negotiations.
We couldn't negotiate without a mandate from Cabinet.
There'll be time for that yet. We don't want this leaking.
I'll be at the Eurogroup meeting on Tuesday. I'll float the contingency fund idea.
This is a game of bluff, Brian. If we ask for help, that's it. We've lost our leverage.
Let's see what happens at the talks tomorrow.
Talks about talks. Okay, our objective this evening is to confirm the Irish entry into a joint EU-AMF assistance program.
I'm afraid I can't confirm anything.
This isn't poker, Brian.
Patrick, it's always poker.
There is a run on.
You didn't concede then?
Just to continue the talks in Dublin. The teams will be arriving tomorrow.
Minister, Mr. Modi.
The program will not work.
I know there are all sorts of problems, but this is where we have to go. There are no options here.
Did you give people to understand that you would be supportive of a motion of no confidence?
And I have not played golf with Mr. Fitzpatrick before then or since. It's the only time I've ever played golf with him.